Hello and welcome back. This is Danny and welcome to my workshop. Today we are going to continue with our ME Autocrafting system, and today we're actually going to do the hard parts. And that would be automating the Inscriber, or autocrafting with the Inscriber, and then autocrafting our crystal growth processes. So as you can see, there's a big hole here where my Inscriber used to be, because I have now brought them downstairs. We'll start with the Inscriber because that is kind of the easier one of the two, and I've already got it set up. So let's just go over the ingredients list first. First of all, you're going to need 5 Inscribers. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to need 5 ME import buses. We've got 4 here. I think we've got 1 here on the front, so the fronts of all the machines. And then we're going to need 5 ME interfaces. We've got 4 here, and I think we've got 1 on the top there. So we'll start with these 4. Oh, and then we're also going to need 2 ME export buses. Okay. And of course we're also going to need our 4 presses, which we should have gotten already. Well, we would have had to have gotten them in order to have set up our ME system in the first place. So and those we got out of our meteorites. So what I've got 4 inscribers set up. 1 inscriber for each of the 4 press types in order to make each of the 4 circuit types. So this one has the calculation press, this one has the engineering press, this one has the logic press, and this one has the silicon press. And then for our ME interfaces, we're going to have 1 for each of the 4 circuit recipes. So here we've got our calculation circuit pattern, which basically, to make this, all we did was say that I think we can, 1 pure Sturgis quartz equals 1 printed calculation circuit. And we talked about that last time, how to do that. It's the same process that we used for setting up our encoded patterns for all of our other machines. Now, of course, you'll have to make sure that you match up the press with the interface. So of course, since we have the calculation press in here, we need to make sure that we have the encoded pattern for the calculation circuit there, and so on. So that is going to allow us to send the item into the inscriber. Now the way these inscribers work, the back of the inscriber is where the item comes in that goes into this slot. Now, if we were, but we cannot pull items out through the back. Items have to be pulled out either through the front or the sides. Now, so that's where we're putting our import bus. So the import bus is basically going to, once the item is finished, so once the inscriber calculation circuit is completed, it'll end up going into the import bus and then being sent back into our ME system. We can also put them on the side. So theoretically we could stack them and have them all on the side. That might actually be a little cleaner than having them sticking out the front like this. I think that's what I did in my Direwolf 20 world. I had them on the sides, but the front works fine. Then to get the next piece, which would be the processors, of course, in order to make our processors, we take our circuits and silicon, a piece of printed silicon and a piece of redstone, and that will get us our printed circuits. So this is the most complicated part right here, because we can't just throw a piece of redstone, a piece of silicon, and the circuit in here all through one ME interface. For whatever reason, it just won't accept it that way. So we have to put our ME interface on the top in order to put the item in a top slot. So in this case, that's where we're going to put our patterns. And this pattern says 1 logic processor equals 1 logic or one printed logic circuit. So what it's going to do is it's going to send the logic processor in here, and it's going to end up being put into this one slot. Now again, it's not going to pull it out that way. So we have this import bus on the front that's going to allow us to pull out the result and then stick it back into our ME system. On this side, we have an export bus, which is basically just going to keep a piece of redstone in there at all times. So there's always going to be a piece of redstone in this inscriber, and since every one of these recipes requires a piece of redstone, that's gonna work for us. And then on the bottom, every single recipe requires a printed silicon. So on the bottom, we have an export bus with a printed silicon in it. Now in this case, we've also added a crafting card. So actually, we should add that to our list of ingredients that we're going to need. Because if we don't have a printed silicon circuit in our ME network, then it's basically going to shut down this process. And if we try to make any one of our circuits or any one of our processors, it's just going to get stuck in here, and our crafting storage unit, our crafting processor, will just sit there, and we won't be able to craft anything ever again until we cancel that job or get a printed silicon in there. So what the crafting card does is it basically says if this item doesn't exist in inventory, then we're going to craft it using what our system already, because our system already knows how to craft it, it's able to do that. So we usually don't directly craft our silicon, our printed silicon. We just tell our system, hey, I want a logic processor, and it will automatically craft a silicon circuit. Well, actually, it'll automatically use the silicon, the printed silicon that's in here, and then once we take that out and use it for something else, it's going to craft a new one and stick it back in there. So right now, right now it should be crafting a new one over here and putting it back in there. So then that's exactly what happened. And I have no room in my inventory to pick that thing up. So one thing to consider here is that we are using quite a few channels in order to do this process. There we go. So what I've had to do, I'll show you in a second here. So clean up my inventory. Okay, so what I've had to do, so we've got the 4 interfaces in the back. We've got the 4 import buses in the front. That's 8 channels right there, just to make our circuits, just to make our 4 different types of circuits. And then over here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 channels in use right here for our 5 different buses. I'm sorry, 4 4 channels for our 4 different buses. This is actually just power coming into here. So we've got a total of 12 channels, which is more than one glass cable can handle. So what I've done is I have a dense ME cable coming down here. If we use our Yeta wrench, we can see that's a dense cable which allows 16 channels, and I just have it going to here. And then we branch off using regular cables, because the regular cables, because we only have 8 channels here, so that's going to be enough. Then we have another regular cable going this way. So that's it. That's how we get our all of our presses to, all of our processors to automatically craft. If we go upstairs, let's just take a quick peek at how this looks in the interface terminal. You can see we've got 5 inscribers, and our first 4 each only have 1 recipe, and they will only ever have 1 recipe because we really can only make 1 thing in those inscribers because the press is in there, and we don't have a good way of getting that press in there. So we just have to keep it in there, and then we have the one that has the 3 processors that basically combines all the ingredients. So that's that. So that was the easy part. Now we're going to get to the hard part. I've already started digging a hole I found a much simpler way to do this. I've actually already recorded this video showing you how to set up this crystal growth. I found a much simpler way to do it. Here's what we're going to need. Some crystal growth accelerators. I actually made 5. We need Steve's Factory Manager, Inventory Manager. This is basically kind of the computer at the center of the Steve's Factory Manager network. We're going to need a redstone emitter, which is also part of Steve's Factory Manager. We're going to need an item valve, which is also part of Steve's Factory Manager. I've got that down here. An ME interface, an ME import bus, an iron chest, well, not an iron chest, any chest, a energy acceptor, and some water. A bucket of water. And that is it. This is similar to something that Direwolf 20 had done, except that he had used an item dropper to drop the items into the puddle of water. Well, it turns out that the Steve's Factory Manager's item valve can actually accept items directly from the ME interface. So that is pretty exciting. That simplifies this whole process quite a bit, because what we would have had to do is have an item dropper, and then we'd have to have some kind of a redstone clock to tick the item dropper. And I had actually created all this stuff. I created a redstone clock. I created the oh, there it is, the open blocks item dropper, which is kind of like the vanilla dropper, except that it drops things straight down. But we don't need any of that. We can actually make this quite a bit simpler. So the way this works is that we have an ME interface hooked up to the item valve. Now the item valve it's basically an inventory block, except that it does not contain inventory within the block. Whatever is in the block that it's pointing at is considered its inventory. So if I put a stone brick in there, basically if we query the inventory of the item valve, it will tell us that the item valve has a stone brick. But the ME interface does not allow us to pull items out of the item valve. So similar to what we did over here, where we had the ME interface on the back to put the items into it for autocrafting, we have the import bus on the front to pull the items out once they're complete. In this case, we have the ME interface hooked up to the item valve, and then we have an import bus hooked up to a chest. And then we have our Steve's Factory Manager setup, which is going to pull the item out of here when it's done. When it becomes the item that it's supposed to be, it pulls it out, puts it in that chest, and then it ends up going back into our ME system. So to get this working, we have to set up 2 triggers in Steve's Factory Manager Machine Inventory Manager. So if you've never worked with this before, I'll give you kind of a quick introduction to how this works. You set up a trigger by just clicking that button, and then a trigger appears. And we can delete that right away. And the default is for it to check this trigger every second, or basically to run this once every second on an interval, or it could be redstone controlled, or it could be a block update detector. And in our cases, we're going to use the default value, which is just to check every second. So every second it's going to check this condition. So we grabbed a condition from over here, which was right here. The condition is that for our inventory contained within the item valve, so remember the item valve's inventory is whatever happens to be above it. So we check the inventory of the item valve. And if the item valve contains, on the upside, any one of these items, a Certus quartz seed, another quartz seed, or a fluix seed, it's going to emit, if it's true, it's going to emit a redstone signal from our redstone emitter, this guy right here, on the top. Strength 15, so a full redstone strength, a full redstone signal strength. If it's false, our redstone emitter on the upside is going to emit a redstone signal of 0. So it's basically going to cancel the redstone signal. So the way this is going to work is that we have a redstone conduit running along with our energy conduit, because we can do that with Ender IO conduits because they're awesome. So here we've got our redstone conduit set to in out, and our power conduit, our energy conduit, which is running through the wall way over there to our energy area, where our energy source is going to be active with a redstone signal. So our energy acceptor, now this is the same thing that we have over here. The energy acceptor is the block that allows us to convert RF energy, which is what we're producing with our Ender IO generators, into applied energistics energy, which is, I'm not sure what it's called. It's like KAE or something like that. KAE. So it's converting redstone into KAE that the applied energistics network can use. So over here, these things are actually detached from our applied energistics, from the rest of our AE network. And they're hooked into this energy acceptor because these guys, these crystal growth accelerators, will always suck power. And in order to shut the power off, we basically have to disconnect them from power. So what's happening here is, if there's no redstone signal here, the energy acceptor is not getting any power because our Ender IO conduit is saying that no power should pass through this unless there's a redstone signal. So it's only active with signal. So there's no power going through here. But if this condition is true and any one of these items, whether it be a Certus quartz seed, nether quartz seed, or a fluix seed, is contained within that puddle of water, it's going to emit a redstone signal, which is going to cause the power, cause this thing to be powered, and then it's going to cause all these things to be powered. So basically, whenever there's a seed in there, this thing's going to get power. So if I throw a seed in there, oh, there we go. we see power. So you see these things are kind of glowing. So those things are going to grow faster now because there's power there. And what we had to do, if you right click on each of these, you get these options, and we want to specify NBT independent detection. By default, it's precise detection. So we've got a Certus quartz seed here at 0% growth, but we want NBT independent we want NBT independent detection, so that no matter what the percentage is, it's still going to consider this condition true if any of these items are in there, no matter what state they happen to be in, like 4% or whatever. So once it becomes a Certus quartz seed, a Certus quartz or fluix quartz crystal, what the? I'm having a little trouble talking because I already recorded this episode once, and now I'm kind of going back and recording it again. I've been talking for a long time. It's getting kind of late, but I got really excited when I saw that I could do this, so I decided to re-record this when I realized that I could use the ME interface on the item valve. Okay, so that's that. So then once that item is no longer there, when that item becomes a pure Certus quartz crystal, or a pure fluix quartz crystal, it'll no longer be a fluix seed. and therefore it will no longer emit a redstone signal. These things will shut off. So then we have a second trigger over here. And what this trigger does is it's just an input-output trigger. So this input, the input checks the inventory of the item valve, and it says if any of these items exist within the item valve, so if any of these items exist in that puddle of water, a Fluix crystal, a pure Fluix crystal, a pure Certus quartz crystal, or a pure nether quartz crystal, then output that item into the iron chest. And in this case, what we've done here is we have a whitelist, which means that if any of these items exist, then we're going to do this action. We're going to take this action. Blacklist means if any item except these items exist. So in this case, we're using a blacklist, which means, because we don't care what the item is, because we're already filtering it here. So if any item is coming out of that input, it goes into this output, and it ends up in this iron chest over here, which has a ME import bus on it. Oh, one very important thing I forgot to mention. In between the oh darn it, I just picked up those Fluix seeds. Oh, whatever. I can't get down there. Here's our item valve. We had to use these inventory cables to connect the item valve to the machine inventory manager. So Steve's factory manager has these what are called inventory cables. I mean, they're blocks and they're really ugly, but that's okay. They're functional. But that basically connects all these machines together, or all these different objects together in a single network. And we can also actually close this thing off now too. So we can put another crystal growth accelerator up here, which will make it go even faster. Because we never have to get in there. The items are coming in from the ME from the ME interface, and they're coming out through Steve's factory manager, and then being pulled into the ME system through the import bus. So we never really have to get to that puddle of water. So that means we can use 5 crystal growth accelerators, which is going to speed up our crystal growth even more. And that's it. There's our crystal automation. Yay, I'm really excited about how this worked out without having to use the dropper. So now let's demonstrate. So I've already created here's our item valve. I've already created 3 patterns, one for pure Fluix crystal, one for pure Certus quartz, and then one for the Fluix crystals. And then I also created in our molecular assembler our crafting patterns for our Fluix seeds and our Certus quartz seeds. What I actually haven't done yet are the nether, pure nether quartz. So let's do that now. I actually did those the last time I recorded this video. So of course our nether quartz seeds are made by nether quartz dust and sand. Okay, it looks like we need to grind up some nether quartz so that we can use that in our recipe. So actually, first of all, let's tell it how to do that, because it's going to need to know every step. So this is a processing pattern, because it's going to be the seg mill that does this. So we can go in here to our seg mill, tell our system that if you want to create nether quartz dust, you stick it in the seg mill. You stick a nether quartz in the seg mill. Then we want to show it how to make the seeds. there. And this is a crafting pattern. And that is going to go in our molecular assembler, which is full. So we're going to have to make another. Okay, so another quartz seeds. So now we can tell it, craft us another quartz seed. There we have it. Now we can say one nether quartz seed equals one pure nether quartz, or one. We can put that in our item valve. There, so now it knows how to make all our crystals. So let's give this a try. So now, if we tell it we want a pure nether quartz crystal, it needs sand and nether quartz dust to make the seeds. So it's going to craft this, and then it's going to grab a nether quartz, make the seed. It's going to grab the nether quartz, grind it up, combine it with sand to make the seed, and then it's going to drop that in our puddle of water. So if we go downstairs quickly, we should see our sag mills working. And then if we go over here, we should see our crystal growth accelerators lighting up any minute now. Yep, there we go. So we know that there's something going on in there. I'll do a time lapse. Okay, so as soon as it became a pure Certus quartz crystal, it got sucked up, put into this chest, and we should find it upstairs now. So pure, there it is, our pure nether quartz crystal. So we'll put those back in there. So that's it. Now just a couple of things to note. When you bring in your ME cables to connect to your import bus and the ME interface, make sure it doesn't connect with these because you don't want these things to be powered when they're not in use, because they'll be using power all the time and they'll be using quite a bit of it. The other thing to note is that the item valve doesn't have to be on the bottom. It could be anywhere as long as it's facing that puddle. So you could theoretically put one of these crystal growth things on the bottom and put the item thing on the top or whatever, if that makes it easier for you, instead of having to dig underground to get at the ME interface. When you create the redstone connections, you may actually have to hit the conduit with your wrench. If you shift and left click, wait a minute. If you shift and left click, if this thing does not automatically connect, if you don't see like this little panel here, shift and left click and you're going to get this thing that says like north, south, east, west, up and down, and you can select to configure this side. So it's basically just like if you were to right click on that panel and you get this thing. You're going to want to make sure it's set to, the redstone is set to in and out, and it doesn't really matter whether it's strong signal or not. The color doesn't matter as long as it matches. And then the same thing down here. You want this to be set to in and out, and then you want your power, as we mentioned before, to be set to active with signal. The nice thing about these redstone conduits, and actually most Ender IO conduits, is that you have these different channel colors. So you could actually have multiple redstone signals in one conduit going to different places on different channels. And as long as the source and the destination have the same color, the redstone signal will get to where you want it to go. Alright, we are definitely out of time today. Thank you for joining me. This was a pretty successful episode. We got our ME system is now creating our circuits and processors for us, and it is also creating all of our crystals for us. Before we go, I just wanted to show you my little my little farm, my little animal farm I set up here. I even have a little farmer down there helping me out. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please click the like button. And if you have any comments or if you have any questions, if I didn't explain anything well enough, please let me know, and maybe I can answer your question in the comments, or maybe I can put something in the video to clear things up a little bit. So thanks for watching. Bye bye.